All right, welcome back to On to the Next Project. I'm Adam Krutinger,
And I'm Brian Miller.
and today I thought we'd do an update one again. I know you've got a lot of fun stuff going on. What do you got going on?
I certainly have a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of it is fun. Most of the stuff going on is also mostly fun. There's some overlap there, which is nice. As you can tell, I'm on. I feel like I'm. Last week, you were so hyped out of your mind. I feel like now I'm the one with all the extra energy right now. I'm just like I'm buzzing. Yeah, my schedule just filled up. It was nuts. I mean, you go back to March when everything went to hell, and for a month or two there, a lot of us were like, are our careers over? Is it even possible to go forward from here? What am I going to do with the rest of my life if I can't do this anymore? And to now be looking at the exact same schedule that I used to have in the real world, just as busy, actually busier, but it's all virtual. It's all for me out of this room, sitting in this chair, or a little bit further back for the other stuff.
That's
It's wild.
amazing because I remember because you were talking about it back then when we first started doing these, and I think we actually have talks about that, how your whole business model changed and changing everything, and now it's changed and you're back to being full up, which is absolutely amazing. Not only is it amazing, but it sounded like you thought it was unachievable before.
I did. I really didn't know. I didn't know how to move forward with here's what it is. I knew I could do virtual events. I didn't know if there was going to be a big enough market for them, right? What we didn't know is, are these clients that are so used to spending X amount of dollars for putting people in the same room where there's all this energy, and that's part of the allure, right? We flew someone in from halfway across the world to come to our event. They're only speaking for 45 minutes. Are they going to do that when everything looks just like everything you watch on the internet, right? And the answer is apparently yes, if it's done well, right? If it's done right. And there's been some education where we've had to, there's a lot more time spent in not the negotiation process, but even before that, just in the client communication process, because they'll call and they'll go, okay, we understand it's virtual. What does it actually look like? What does it
Yeah.
feel like? How do we
Right.
do
Yeah.
it? What is the tech?
'Cause
You
there's
know?
a lot of bad examples of virtual stuff out there, and you wanna make
Yeah.
sure you're getting that. And the other thing is too, which I wanted to point out why I think it's because I would imagine I could have seen a world where this happened for you, but I would have thought it taken much longer. But I think in my guesstimation of why it happened so fast is just because of the way funding for most colleges go. They get a set amount of budget, and if budget's the way it works in a lot of companies. If you don't use it, you lose it. So to them, it's probably from a planning standpoint, it's probably very different. Even though on some scale they could argue they're getting less since you're not there in person. But I think that's got to be a big testament to what brought it back full for you. Is just the fact that, hey, we still have an orientation, we still have the same budget. Let's hire them virtually now.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of it. The colleges have been able to colleges and universities, and for anybody watching this who is not in America, this will sound very, very strange because Adam, you may not realize this, but because I'm in the college market, there is no college market outside of the United States. The
Really?
college market is not a thing that is exclusive, pretty much exclusive to the US. You talk to people in England and Europe across the way, in Australia. Universities don't have giant budgets to bring in comedians and magicians and jugglers and hypnotists and all this stuff. They have budgets for guest speakers, but not the kind of guest speaking I do. They have budgets to bring in, Bill Gates once in a while. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Like they have like endowments to bring in famous people,
Yeah.
but they don't bring in like full-time professional speakers that do events on different topics for students. So here in the U.S., these colleges have huge budgets. They're paid for by the students. It's in the student fees. There's a fee that's part of your astronomically high tuition that is allocated for that. And so to that end, every single student pays that fee, which means the colleges put on events constantly, even if hardly anyone's showing up. They'll spend a fortune even if 9 students show up because the 9 students that showed up to that paid the same fee every semester for the student activities as the people who didn't.
Yeah.
So they deserve it just as much as anybody does. And everybody deserves something that's for them. So colleges do a really cool job, and a lot of it's designed to keep students safe by keeping them on campus and giving them options that are free. Again, it was in their tuition, but they don't have to spend anything else. So they were able to go, well, we've got this money and students really need something. I mean, they need something. We got to convince them there's a reason to be here right now. Like, because, how do you pitch virtual college for the same tuition? Colleges aren't lowering their tuition for virtual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so part of it is they have to really over deliver on some of this stuff like this. We're actually becoming more valuable to a certain extent. Corporations, my corporate work has been very different. A lot of them have been like, well, we're just not going to have the event this year. We'll have it in next year, and we'll just change the contract to next year. And they're like, so they're to them that's a reschedule. We'll just reschedule the event. And for us, it's a little frustrating because one, thrilled to have them keep us on the schedule, right? Thrilled to have them keep us. Okay, fine, next year. But it's not really a reschedule. That's a cancellation, right? I would have been booked next year anyway.
Yeah.
So, so the corporate stuff has been interesting, but even the corporate market has gotten on board with virtual events over the last few weeks. It's been very recent. Everyone has accepted finally that, yeah, this is kind of a big deal and a big problem, and it's going to be around for a while. So virtual is becoming a little bit easier to.
Again, I would imagine it's. I can see how it would be different for those companies too, but I imagine it's also a little bit similar as far as my thinking into why they're jumping into it. Um, because again, people who coordinate these big events for corporations have a budget, you know,
Yep.
and they're, and that's the other thing too. Like if this never happened, the pandemic, and then you tried to pitch virtual things to it, no, if anyone bought it, they'd want to pay a lot less. And it's amazing how this has just flattened the market essentially for it. So it's just like, again, they can't pay less for it, and they have to just, there's no other option, And that's why I think you've done so well is that if you're going to do it, you make it good, like, because I know your live stream setup is like amazing, and it looks like a like a professional, not, I want to say movie, but I think that has a
It
different
looks like it looks like a broadcast studio. I mean, it looks like what you would expect to
yes.
come out of a broadcast studio.
Yes, it does, and what a game changer that is, because your average magician probably doesn't can't do that, because again, you are lucky enough to have the background knowledge of, went to college for audio engineering and stuff, and like you've just got that foundation that some other people would have to learn and invest in, and then
Mhm.
both of us were lucky enough to kind of have this base of technical equipment for streaming and stuff that's just let us be able to start right away.
No, it's true, and what's so funny on that because I've not written a single word of my second book in the last 5 months because I was working on this follow-up book about the role of luck and success, and then for 5 months all I've focused on is making sure I can continue making a living, right? So I totally had to drop a 2-year out project like a book, but now I'm starting to think about that book again, and what you just said, and you even used the word how lucky you are that you already had all this stuff and knew all this stuff. Yeah, no kidding. So the luck aspect right now is working in my favor, but brutal when you think about the industry at large. I'm guessing 90%, 95% of industries like mine, like speakers or entertainers, just got wiped out because they didn't have the technical know-how, the equipment, or the funds to acquire it in order to compete in this world. Because here's what I think about, like, if you were when we were aspiring magicians, if you could find a decent suit, someone donates it to you, you can get it cheap somewhere, you find a decent suit and you're really good. If you show up at a private event and you charge real money, they don't know that you're not making it. They don't know that you live in a crap hole apartment. They don't know that you can't afford to feed yourself. You show up in a decent suit and you're really good, you're as good as anybody and you've earned the right to be there. you can't do that now. If you live in a crap apartment, you don't have decent cameras, lighting, if you have weird, stuff in the background, if you live with your parents still because you're only 23 or 24 and you're just trying to get started and you can't find time or location to do that, you can't compete anymore. So this actually took the 5% or 10% maybe of us that were already at the top, and it just made it took us into the only ones. It decimated. And I think it's in the long term, that may not be a good thing. Good for me, may not be a good thing for the industry, though. What's going to happen to young artists?
Yeah, it's interesting. And if we look at that industry as magicians, let's say there's on the highest end, I should say, like Copperfield and the people doing like
Penn
Vegas
and
stuff,
Teller.
okay? And let's say medium is the college market. Okay, and let's say low, and now I'm saying low on the professional end, not saying like amateurs. Low on the professional end is your local professional magician, and then we're in like the middle. And I wonder, now that this is all virtual, like it all shifts around, like now there's almost like, or either a shift or an additional slot, whereas now I think someone like, compared to all the college magicians, you have to be now, even within there's a spectrum, right? And you're probably in the higher tier of it, and now you're probably at like the top because of your production, because
Yeah.
again, they'd have to, I mean, even if someone had the financial means to do it, it still takes time, and for them, even a team.
Yeah, no, that is exactly what happened, which is there was a kind of a core group of college magicians, which many of them are mentors and are now friends of mine, but they were guys I really looked up to, and I got in like right at the tail end of when it was possible to kind of nudge your way into that upper echelon, just by chance of when we graduated college. And so I remember when there was really a core group, 10, 12, 15 on the whole national circuit that you could count. Now there's probably 100. 5 months ago, there was 100 magicians on the national circuit because it became, the cost to entry just became so much easier. It just the digital media, the internet just made it so much easier to reach schools and do your own marketing, and you didn't need big marketing budgets. And so it started, I'm not going to say it watered down, but there was so many more magicians that could do these gigs. And now it wiped it back to that original core group. It's just the same 10 guys I knew 10 years ago that are the ones doing it now. And I'm looking at it going, I can't believe it's back to this.
Well, that's lucky for them, even, because I thought it would still shift it. Whereas, like, maybe that younger, newer person had the tech infrastructure, and now they're kind of at the top
But
now.
but
And one
not
of
the
these
budget.
older people are not with the budgets.
but
That's where
but they but young magicians who are technically savvy, they don't have the budgets for this. Think about think about our buddy Nevin. So Nevin was starting to, and he won't mind me saying this publicly because we've talked about this publicly already with him. Nevin was 1 year into his professional magic career, graduated college. He was 1 year in. He had gotten signed to a national agency. He was doing good work. He was getting gigs. He was networking, doing everything right. But he's only, what, 22, 23. He doesn't have savings yet. He doesn't have a budget yet. He doesn't have, and so when this happened, he can't compete. He doesn't have the money to get this kind of stuff, to learn it, to set. He doesn't have a place to set it up. He doesn't have marketing budgets to reach these people. And here's the crazy thing. This is the thing you keep forgetting. It used to be, if there were, 10 magicians that were the top ones and you wanted one of them, but they're the top ones, so they're all booked on that date you wanted. Well, you got to go to the next tier. And so because they were booked, because they were already booked that day, younger aspiring magicians would get a chance. And this is true of every art form. But now, if you want me, let's say, and I'm not putting myself in that upper echelon, but say you want me for whatever reason, you met me somewhere, you saw my TEDx talk, whatever. You go, are you available Thursday at 3 o'clock for us to do a show for us? And I go, no, but I'm available at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock and 7. Pick any other 1 hour that day. So all of a sudden it's not like I'm not available, therefore Nevin gets a gig and gets a chance. I still get the gig. So it's really limiting the amount of magicians who are able to work to the ones who were already at the time. It's actually making the inequities much bigger. I didn't mean for this to be a weird political rant, but it's making the inequities among artists even bigger than they were before, which
The
is not.
inequities, but also, I mean, like, but then again, like, you have to be. I mean, again, what I guess what I'm saying is too is like so many people just aren't even prepared for it if they got it.
Yeah, and there are definitely some of the guys who were the top who have fallen off the map. Some of them who were absolutely at the top of the game um, were just not prepared for this, or were too unwilling to do it at the beginning, and now they're too far behind. So some guys gambled and said, I think live is coming back. I'm just going to wait until it does. They
Yeah.
gambled, and now it's too late. You know, the catch up game is the rest of us have been doing it for 5 months already. We've been in it. We've been marketing. We've already got reputations for doing these things well. And clients, when they're booking something unknown or that's new to them, they want to book someone that has done the new thing a bunch of times, that knows what they're
Yes.
doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's really wild. All of that is to say, I'm very, very grateful to be in this situation. Um, but it does give me a lot to think about regarding luck and that new book that I've been working on. And
Yeah. No. Again, it's that famous quote, which I don't even know exactly what it is. What is it? Luck is preparation meets opportunity.
opportunity.
Right. That's what it is, and that's exactly what happened. What happened? So
Yeah.
either way, there's still a little bit of sludge to get through. Not so much on your end as much as it is people being like, okay, yeah, this is the way it's going to be for a while. Let's jump in. So as far
Yeah.
as clients,
Yeah, that was it. Having said all that, there's a lot of stuff that's really, really enjoyable. You and I were talking before we hit record, though. I really thought that virtual for me was going to be just such an easier life, because I was used to being on the road constantly, being on 2, 3 hours of sleep and 2 flights a day and rental cars and eating fast food 3 meals a day. And I was like, oh, this is going to be such an easier life. I just got to go into a room in my house for an hour to do an event. It's exhausting, if not as much, maybe even more so. And part of it, as we were talking about, is we are all already operating at like 10% of our normal capacity emotionally because of the pandemic and everything that's dragging on. But also, the amount of stuff in my head during an event. I used to just have to be present. I'm on stage, there's an audience, I'm speaking or I'm doing magic, I'm just there with them. And there's a technical crew dealing with everything else. Lights is being dealt with somebody. I'm not doing lights, I'm not doing sound, I'm not doing this. But now I'm doing the event. I'm trying to deliver. I've got to manage a Zoom room. The other day, I did 4 workshops in a row. Each of them had 150 people in the Zoom room each time. So I got 150 people, 4 screens to scroll through, make sure I'm keeping everybody engaged and interactive. I'm managing the breakout rooms and the technology. I've got an audio mixing board over here. I'm switching cameras when I need to do a demonstration. I've got all this other stuff, and somewhere in the midst of that, oh, by the way, also deliver world-class content, which is what they paid for.
yeah.
It's exhausting in a
Well,
in
not
a
only
fun
that,
way.
yeah, just like you were saying though too, because like how you can be before you drive to one college or fly to one college, do the one show, and then you're done for the day. And now if you do 2, 3, 4 in a row, there was something that was kind of nice about that wind down time, the driving back, driving there, time to think, and even and not only that, because then you're done with your show, then you walk into your life in the living room. There's something about that decompression time of even just like traveling, which, and again, in a lot of ways, it's nice not to have that too. But when it's never there, it's kind of like you never have your kind of time in your own head a little bit.
I tell you, I haven't really considered it like that until you just said it. That really struck a chord with me. I don't miss being away from home, but I do miss the time driving back home from the gig if it was an hour away or 2 hours away. I miss the kind of just putting music on in the background and just kind of driving mindlessly, kind of tired, but thinking about how the gig went and whatever. I miss the quiet nights in the hotel room with the I get my fast food on the way back to the hotel and put out my tablet and put out my fast food and just eat some greasy fast food before I have to get 3 hours of sleep while I watched one episode of It's Always Sunny or whatever I was watching, right? I do miss that. I don't miss the dead time of the physical exhaustion of flying across the world. But I do miss the quiet moments. You don't get them anymore.
The quiet moments, and actually one thing I'm realizing too, even it's probably in a way the origin of what this is, because that's when we'd have a lot of our conversations. You'd call me like, "Hey, I'm on the road for 2 hours. Let's talk," and I'd be like, "Okay, yeah." We'd have conversations like this that we've
Yeah.
started.
Yeah, which and we were doing this. This has kind of become our. We don't really have calls outside of this anymore because this has kind of become the time that we catch up before we hit record and after and during and everything. But which is great that we can do this. But it's not spontaneous, and it's not. It's just it's the same box I'm already looking at all day. It's not a different thing, like when we used to have a call on the road, it was just that was a
It's
totally
still different.
different
Yeah,
thing.
it's still different. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Welcome
It's
to
there's
2020.
yeah, what it's we're barely. I mean, there's so much more 2020 to go.
There is. There is. Yeah. This is the longest year. It is actually. It's like 3 years in one.
Between I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, I got a baby coming in a month, and then there's an election that determines the rest of human history, and then it's like there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's
Oh
a
yeah.
lot happening.
Yeah. It is. Whew,
Oh,
one for the history books for sure.
yeah, oh, yeah, that is for sure. So, anything you need to catch us up on? Because we I know we
No. I'm glad we said that was. I thought it'd be a little bit more of a back and forth, but I'm glad it wasn't because that was extra interesting. When it's just that one thing. And maybe we'll talk about it next time. But I'm just starting to get like a little trouble finding motivation, and maybe that can be our topic for next time. So
I think that's a great topic, and I think that's a topic that almost everybody can relate to. I think even the most
yeah.
motivated people
And
that
that's why it's unique for me because I usually have no problem being motivated, and even me not being that motivated, I still have motivation. It's just lower than my normal because I potentially have a lot more, but I don't want it to sneak in further. So
well, I think that's a really good topic. I feel exactly. I just said that to Lindsay the other day. I said, I've never felt so unmotivated, and she said, "What do you mean? You're doing things constantly. You're never off." And I'm like, I know I'm still doing them. I just don't feel motivated to do them anymore.
yeah, yes,
I'm doing
that's
them because I'm a
exactly.
professional.
Yes, that's great. All right. Well, with that said, we'd love to hear how the audience is doing too. Ed, how was your weekend? And on to the next project.
On to the next project.